Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's MasterClass hosted by Family Office Access. I'm Danielle Patterson, CEO of Family Office Access, and it is a true honor to welcome you to our special conversation today. This session is close to my heart because our guest is someone whose work made a deep and personal impact on me. I was first introduced to Carol Lavin Bernick through Denny Sherrod, who runs DC Finance conferences. Carol spoke at the Chicago event last year, and what stood out most was not just the incredible business success she had, although that alone would fill multiple sessions, but it was the grace, generosity, and honesty in which she shared her journey. Carol has a rare ability not just to share the highlight reel, but the real lessons behind the scenes, the stories of what shaped her, the moments that tested her, the values that carried her through. In a world where so much is filtered or held back out of fear or scarcity, Carol leads with generosity and authenticity. Hearing Carol speak came at a moment when I needed it most. I was still processing the loss of my mother, who passed away just a month after her cancer diagnosis. And Carol was just, well, my mother was an extraordinary woman, someone I imagine Carol would have been friends with, hardworking, deeply generous, and someone who used her gifts as well to uplift those around her. But even in her passing, my mom gave to us, rooted in faith. She faced the end of her life with strength and grace, unafraid and at peace, and her courage deepened my own spirituality and got me thinking about legacy and what I hope to leave behind to my three children. And so my introduction to Carol's work came at a very important time in my life, and receiving a copy of this amazing book, Gather As You Go, spending time with her wisdom after, offered so much comfort and lots of clarity. It reminded that even in loss, there's beauty, especially when we share these stories, as it helps others to heal. Carol, a bit more about her. She is a force. She has been a CEO, mother of three, grandmother to eight, a philanthropist, a change maker, and a true community builder. From inventing household brands like Static Guard, Mrs. Dash, to overseeing a nationally recognized cultural transformation at Alberto, Culver, to later leading the company's $3.7 billion sale to Unilever, Carol's story is anything but ordinary. She currently leads Polished Nickel Capital Management, where she stewards a diverse portfolio of investments and operating companies, and still finds time to chair major healthcare and university boards, runs a nonprofit supporting over 20,000 under-resourced students annually, written books that capture her wisdom and warmth. So today's conversation in this given hour will not even begin to scratch the surface of everything she's done, because there's simply too much. But my hope is that what we do cover gives you a sense of not just Carol's accomplishments, but the heart and humanity behind them. And if you find yourself inspired today, I encourage you to pick up a copy of her book. I'll put it up again. Gather As You Go. Every cent of profit supports Enchanted Backpack. And as she mentioned in our conversation, she does not take a speaking fee. This is a way that we can support and show our gratitude for her wisdom today. So I will stop, because every moment with Carol is precious. And so with that, I would love to introduce everyone to Carol. Carol, welcome.
I'm excited to be here, Danielle, and I hope it's worth just a little bit of what you said it was today. But when I speak, the things that I like to say to people are, if you just take one thing, if you take one thing home with you today that will make you walk around your life or your business a little differently, it'll be worth my time. So I hope it will be.
I guarantee it will be, I know. So I would love for those that don't know your business journey, I'd love to start at the beginning, because you have deep roots, and you grew up in Chicago, one of three kids, and your parents built what started as a small beauty supply distributor into the global brand Alberto Culver. And actually, I'm a very visual person, and since I have the book here, I thought it'd be fun to show all these recognizable household brands. I still use in my shower, I have the St. Ives face scrub. Many of these things, Static Guard, Miss Dash, Nexus, Tresemme. So
Yeah.
yes. So
Um,
anyhow, can you share what it was like growing up in the Lavin household, and at what point you decided to join the family business?
Yeah, my maiden name is pronounced Lavin. I'll start because my dad would be correcting that for you.
Thank you.
So my parents, my dad was a manufacturer's rep. My mother was actually educated in business. And long story short, they bought the Alberto Culver company, was doing a $400,000 in sales. It was doing $100,000 in sales. They paid $400,000 for it. They borrowed the money. You should know that my mom was raised in a single mother household. Actually, her mother didn't divorce her husband. She kicked him out of the house because he drank too much. And my grandmother worked for General Electric in the 40s, which was really unusual. And at times they were food insecure. So that's pretty big. And it has a lot to do with how they raised us and our philanthropy and all the rest. And my dad was probably, you know, within middle class, but probably the lower side of it. And long story short, they bought this Alberto VO5 hairdressing, which is grease in a tube, if you will, competed with Brill Cream and all the rest back in 1955. And I was born in 52. So obviously I was a little kid and didn't know much about it at the time. But it's fun. I just finished writing the Alberto Culver story, which is pretty amazing. And I wanted my grandchildren who, you know, we sold the company in 2011 and they were not around at that point. I wanted them to really understand where it all came from. But my dad really never focused that much on the beginning, but it was so fun to read because he took this company that had $100,000 in sales, took his Studebaker all around the country, et cetera, et cetera. And in 9 years, he had $100 million company, which if you do the present cost of money, that's absolutely crazy and nuts. He traveled a great deal. My mother was equally as important in the business. She ran financials and security and operations, and my dad was basically a fantastic salesman. But he had a unique ability to cite trends, and so he would bring back a lot of things on his travels, and boom. And he was wildly successful in the first 9 years. But anyway, I sat at the dinner table and you know, you just heard it, you grew through it. One of my college classes was an Alberto balsam, you know, that coincidentally it was a marketing project. And here we're talking about Alberto balsam, which was, you know, when Gillette sued us, whatever. But I ended up joining Alberto right out of college. And I went to Tulane University, which became a huge part of my life. We can talk about that later. And I was hired by Bristol Myers Squibb, or it was Bristol Myers at the time. I think it was Bristol Myers at the time. And once I got that job offer, I called my dad and told him I wanted to start working with them. Interesting, my older brother never joined the company. My younger sister never joined the company. And, you know, if we talk about raising kind, caring, competent kids, which we will later, you should understand when I say they didn't join the company, my brother ended up dying of a drug overdose in his 40s. And my sister writes music, but she's never, I want to be careful here. She's very generous, but she's never really had a working paying job. And she's bipolar. So I joke around and say to people, I think I'm adopted, but I'm not. I look exactly like my mother and I act like my father. So, you know, it was dinner table conversation all the time, all the way right to, you know, through college.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm one of four. We look alike, but we couldn't be farther.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Yeah,
It
I
is
look at my
amazing.
8 grandchildren, I go, who are you people? You know?
So you inherited this amazing work ethic from growing up, seeing both of your parents.
Yeah, I did, and I don't know why it was not exactly the same for my brother and sister, but I have lots of stories in that book about raising raising my kids in a different way
Mhm.
in order to make that happen. I started as a marketing staff assistant. I'm a pretty creative person, kind of marketing person by birth. I created static art in the first 6 months of going to the company. And my dad was very, very possessive of the VO5 brand. And luckily, I don't think he wanted to fight with me. He put me in the household grocery products division. And I created static art and then Mrs. Dash and then Molly McButter and then Baker's Joy. And then I was promoted it to the other side, and then I started causing him lots of trouble. But working on
Amazing
the
that
grocery
you
stuff.
established, yeah, that success so early on. And this is fun to see. Another visual Debbie, who has been so generous in helping us prepare, gave the executive management chart. So we can see just how quickly over the years Carol really established herself as a leader and rose through the ranks. And I imagine, yeah, with, your parents both being active members of, the business and having you come in, and
Just like most family business situations, I was underpaid.
yeah.
I made I found out I made $10,000 starting as a marketing staff assistant in 1974. The guys were making 16,000. And my mother was recognized later as one of the top women in business in the 70s. And I'm going, how did you people do that? But anyway, something I fought against for a long time, and not quite the same today. But yeah, I jumped into Culver early and became a new products person, and then went on to help grow Tresemme from a small brand into the fastest growing hair care brand in the country. That's great news. That's very fun. That took a long time, but it also eventually became the reason we ended up having to sell the company. But we'll go into that later.
Yeah. Well, leading up to that sale, I know it was a long process, probably, of really getting your dad to step down so that you could take over the reins. Can you talk a little bit about any of the tensions or the lessons learned from shifting from generation one to generation two?
Well, it's quite detailed in that book, but let me make a very long short story short. We were a public company. My husband worked at the company also. He reported to my dad going up through finance. I reported to my father growing up through marketing and operations. And I think we were 40 or so. The company was not, we own the Sally Beauty Company. And Sally, the Justice Department didn't really realize we were rolling up the beauty industry. We would acquire a small beauty supply store, one or two of them every year for decades. And we grew this into 3,300 retail stores, the largest supplier of beauty supplies in the world, and the second largest supplier of ethnic beauty care in the world, and probably for the United States. I mean, in overall hair care. But anyway, the board was threatening to sell the Alberto Culver consumer products part of the business. Sally was doing amazingly well. Alberto consumer products had been posting 12, 13% pre-tax in the late 80s. And I know this sounds like a long time ago, but it doesn't seem so long ago to me. And it fallen to 2% pre-tax by 1993. And it was a real drain on the company. And in the early years, Alberto Consumer made all the money and we invested in Sally. But anyways, the board was pretty fed up. And Howard and I were extremely frustrated. We were very close to my parents, working with them Sunday lunches, the whole thing. And we went to them because it was kind of this, we used this graphic in any of the speeches. It was a spaghetti chart. Everybody reported to different people. It wasn't good. But anyway, we did a company survey, and I'm kind of a survey queen because I'm a marketing person and you do research all the time.
Yeah.
And we did a survey of our people, and I consider myself a people person, but I was kind of shocked. I was really shocked by what that survey showed. And basically, we were a place where people came to learn and leave. They didn't feel connected to the company. They didn't really understand our mission, our goals, any of that kind of stuff. And we needed to take over and lead that company. My dad is probably the oldest living founder ever to turn over a business to a second generation. We went out at the board's mandate and put a top business psychiatrist on the board, two directors, Howard, myself, and my mom. And it was a 2-year board negotiated change. And
Wow.
it was really tough. And it was really on me. There were 3 boxes. One, we agree to disagree and we sell the company. Could be easy. We agree to disagree and you and mom, my dad and my mother stay, and Howard and I leave, and we leave. And we were prepared to leave.
Wow.
And that's the key. We were prepared to
Yeah.
leave. And the third option is you and mom move up, you become executive chairman, you stay on the board, but you turn over leadership to us. And finally, they took box 3. And it was tough. It was really tough. But at the same time, the culture change, which was my big initiative that I think you want to talk about a little bit later, but
Yeah.
over the next, I mean, the whole world changed. The culture changed everything about Alberto, and our the hockey stick, and made our company extremely successful, our family extremely wealthy, and the people energized and engaged. So we'll talk about that whenever you want to, but it
Yeah.
was a tough move to, and my mother, my parents were a fairy tale. They adored each other. She finally said, give it to him, or we're going to blow it. And he finally listened to her. He always wanted to move the company on to future generations. He just couldn't let go. He's an entrepreneur who just couldn't let go. But anyway, we finally got that to happen.
Well, very understandable, those emotions your father felt, and congratulations on being able to navigate that. I mean,
Well, it's interesting. John Ward, who is a household family name at Kellogg, we went to him and asked him to be the facilitator. He said, I can't. Your dad's way too strong. I know him. I cannot. And he found this guy, his name was Michael Schulman. He was in Toronto. I'm not sure he's doing this anymore, but he had run his own company, and he was tough. Oh my gosh, he was tough. And it was important because my dad was tough, and he's my best friend, but he was tough to work for.
yeah.
Anyway.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing it so honestly. And yeah, and you kind of rolled right into the amazing culture change that you brought about. And I know that this in and of itself, you give 3-hour talks at universities. So I mean, we're not even going to be able to do justice to everything that you really created. But I know it was one of, the most important chapters of your leadership, and they profiled this in the Harvard Business Review. So it's something that others have really looked to as an example. So I'm honored to be able to hear from you more about this amazing culture change you brought on, how you did that, what implications of growth it had on the company. Completely transformative.
It's a very long story, so I'm trying to figure out how I can capsulize it, a few minutes here. Our people were disengaged. Our turnover rate, people, was twice the national average. People didn't know our goals. We didn't make any money. It was really a disaster. But anyway, I was named president of Alberto Culver USA in 1993. That's what happened when this is an interesting story. My ex-husband and I are divorced. And my parents wanted us to be co-CEOs. Well, I had 3 kids, and I was not going to fight that battle with my husband. So we have a board mandated, written thing that when my father retired as chair, I would take the position of executive chair, but I would agree to have Howard be the CEO. Now, I had never reported to my husband before. We have totally different skill sets. But anyway, the good news is he'd never run an operating business. So I had pretty much hands free on the consumer products piece. But assembled my team. I was in my 40s. I was kind of young, I don't know. And I had a couple of 60-year-old men who reported to me. And they just didn't believe it was for real. And so I changed a few people on my team. My father and my ex-husband's manner was to set crazy high goals, and then frankly to be upset with you if you didn't make them. I set reasonable goals and celebrated, under promise and over deliver. But the first thing I did was I pulled 100 people at a time, which turned out to be about 20 meetings, into a room, and I threw pennies on the floor. And everybody walked in, and we had a very diverse workforce, and nobody picked up a penny. And I started saying, what's our biggest brand? What are we running the factories around the clock? And everybody goes, VO5 shampoo. And they're all excited, they know the answer. I said, pick up a penny. I said, we make less than 1 cent on $100 million worth of VO5 shampoo. If we don't turn this into nickels a year from now, we're going to be out of business. The board has mandated that we will sell the consumer products business, and we kind of shocked people into action. We built all kinds of teams, and my parents were really good people, but they had been burned on the early years of Alberto, because my dad's in Time magazine. First 10 years of his life is being, it's amazing the publicity he got because he was fighting Procter and Gamble, and he's an upstart. But he had closed down because he didn't give interviews, didn't do any of that kind of stuff because people were being stolen from Alberto all the time. Yeah. So I was kind of like that window shade that pops up. I told people all of our ills. I told them all of our problems. I told them what we were facing. I showed them our profit margins. I showed them that we didn't make any. I showed everybody everything, which drove my father crazy, by the way. But I needed to get vulnerable with our people and have them understand how serious this was for not just me, but everybody in the company. So we did a bunch of things, and I'm actually writing a book on innovative philanthropy right now, and there's a chapter that's driving growth through philanthropy. And it's one of the key proponents that we did in turning the company around. I mean, I have the privilege of working on the Northwestern Healthcare Board, and been on it for over 30 years, from the time it was a good community hospital. Now it's one of the top 10 in the nation. And, I sit there and they have a motivating story. They save lives. We make shampoo. How do you don't get quite the same commitment there. So we ended up coining a saying, powerful growth yields the privilege to care. And it was one of maybe 6 or 7 key tenets of the culture change. But the more money we made, the more we improved our benefits, and the more we helped the community. And we tied all of these different things to the community. And we had big, we had a president's message every year where we had videotapes of our people helping people, and the American Red Cross and the Rehabilitation Institute and all these people talking about all of our good work. So we connected to people's hearts. Another thing we said was everybody works for a higher power. And I'm not getting religious here, but if my kids were the most important thing in my life, you got to believe it was the most important thing in most other people's life, whether your higher power or it's your parents or your church or your kids or your mother who had leukemia. We needed to validate family at the same time. We were asking you to give everything to the workforce. And our HR people everybody said nobody's ever worked harder than they worked at Alberto. But we were a family-friendly company, not a caretaking company, but a caring company. Another major thing we did was we listened to our workforce. My son was at a major bank downtown after he graduated from Kellogg, and they did a survey, and all these young people with very, very fine educations wrote down what they thought and whatever. And the head of HR came in the next day and told them they were wrong. They didn't know what they were talking about. They lost 6 kids that day. It's like, do not do a survey unless you're willing to listen and make some changes. So we listened to our workforce, and it may hurt, but I got to tell you, your people are talking anyway. And we had it's a very long situation, but we had something called micros and macros. And twice a year, I would pull all my group development leaders. That's a whole other thing to tell you about. And everybody brought a guest. So there were maybe 80 people in this room. And we divided them by numbers as they walked in. So you didn't go with your best friend into a corner, and you had 15 minutes to tell us what the little bitty crappy things were about this company that you didn't like, and what the big macros were. So micros and macros. There was not a time when I didn't sit there with my executive team and cross out a micro right in front of them. And it would be something like, we don't have computers to go away when we go to the sales meetings. Well, we're going to have them. Or I need a package pass to get in on a Saturday, and it's right. It's like we would make changes so people would start to, whole workforce would start to wonder what came out of this meeting. And the macros, of course, we need more acquisitions. We need a better IT system. We need, so we listen to our workforce. And we raised the care and feeding of our workforce to a job, and it's the whole GDL program, which I don't have enough time to talk to you about that. But we also had a culture that was literally in your face honesty, which was part of the window blind, if you will. It was not about the people that made the mistake, but anytime we had a mistake, we sat down and said, why did we screw this up? Why was that order misshipped? And we just made it part of our culture. We were proud. I still believe to this day, businesses are problems. And if you don't solve them together, what are you doing there? Another thing that we did that was so critical is, and I say it all the time, companies or people or hospitals, they tell you what to do and they tell you how to do it, but they don't tell you why. So when you're trying to ship to Walmart and they have a case they have a requirement, a timing requirement, case fill, all that stuff. And you're working with your warehouse people. They don't really get it. When you talk to them in a company-wide meeting that says, your daughter's going to the prom tomorrow night. She's got this magnificent red dress. She has a red purse and she's waiting for Macy's to send them red shoes. And you get green shoes in the mail, you want to kill Macy's. You are so angry. You know, if you don't make the case fill rate and Walmart does 14% of our business, we're going to lose 14% of our people in the workforce. So the understanding of why is such an important thing. And I'll say one last thing, but it's a 3-hour lecture.
Yeah.
And it's not to universities, it's usually to corporations. We actually, when the article came out from Harvard, and then later we're the only story in their book on culture and change that isn't written by an academic. We taught the British Broadcasting Company, we taught the Chicago Tribune, we taught Marriott Hotels, and it got to the point where we were teaching so many people we just had to stop. But the key was, I would not take the time to do this unless the CEO or the CEO of the division in the United States was literally in the room. Because you cannot change a culture through your HR department. It has to start at the top. So there's one thing that I ask, no matter what it is, a charity I'm starting or a business I'm running, is how you measure success. What are you trying to do? How much will it cost? How will we measure success? And when will it be done? And people learn, don't walk into my office without the ability to at least put those thoughts in front of me and, and my team. It wasn't me, it was, we had 12 people who were critical in this culture change, and it worked. But I mean, the joke was stock went crazy. We became the darling of the street. We brought our profits back up to 10 and 11%. And it worked. And what's interesting about that, people say, what is your superpower? Well, I never thought it was culture change, but when Alberto announced we were going to sell to Unilever, I had been on the board of Northwestern Healthcare for 25 years, whatever it was. And I got a call from their CEO and said, we need you to be the next chair. And I said, you don't understand. Don't have the gravitas that you need as chair. Ed Liddy had been a previous chair. Jim McNerney, the head of Boeing, followed me. I mean, come on. But it was an interesting time because Northwestern was merging with their first hospitals. And I was chair, coincidentally, when we merged with 4 of the first hospitals. And how you bring those organizations, how you connect the people, everything in the world, it's all about people. It's always about people. And you could be Nordstrom and understand that, or you can be many other department stores who don't understand that, etc. So our people, it didn't hurt that our stock options went crazy also. People were monetarily, satisfied also, but it was a huge, huge effort, and sort of became my superpower.
Is just, I got goosebumps when you talked about really asking for the feedback of the
and what's wrong. I'll go off. I mean, we created a charity that I'll talk about later. I think you have it on this list. It's called Enchanted Backpack. It services 20,000 children a year, 50 schools, and anywhere around the Chicago area. But twice a year, I go to the teachers and I go, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What stuff are we sending you don't need? What do you need more of? And, people accept what they help create, and they also build it with you. So, I thought I knew how to create a charity for schools. My daughter was a Title I teacher for 7 years. And I went to her with a program and she said, Mom, forget Mrs. Piggle Wiggle, forget James and the Giant Peach. Those are lovely Lucky Strike extras and people will love it. But we need core books. We need all of the core subjects because the schools don't have what they need. So we've literally changed the Enchanted Backpack program maybe 50% through the help of social workers and teachers. So anybody who thinks they know it all, I will tell you, I think they're wrong. So ask people.
Well, before I move us on to the next chapter, I mean, I want to hear the full 3-hour presentation. This is just so.
I don't know if you do. It does get done.
I do. But Layla had a really great question before we move on. I'd love to, incorporate as much as we can. And I'm sorry I didn't say this at the beginning. I jumped right into introducing Carol. But for anyone that has questions, I love to incorporate you all. That's the reason we do this live. And so Layla asks, how you handled the balance between being vulnerable and getting engagement and connection to everyone on board versus the possibility of getting cheated on your trust and your brand and your board. Um,
It is tricky, and believe me, it's hard to do it without some success in your pocket, right? You have to have some success in your pocket, but um, this may not be directly answering the question, but when we interviewed people, we interviewed them to fit the culture, right? So when somebody walked in my front door, my assistant would be the first interviewer, but the guy didn't know it, the girl didn't know it. We walked 10 minutes to get to my office through the whole place, depending how they reacted to some of the questions that were asked and whatever. Um, so when I told you before that I had to get rid of 3 out of 9 people reported to me. They weren't going to play. So I
yeah.
hugged them and said goodbye. I don't think they ever expected to be said goodbye to, but get on the team or go away. We had another saying, be kind or leave. You can get in trouble, but build whatever you're doing with the closest cohorts that you have. Everybody get on the same page. Prove that you're going to be vulnerable. Prove that we're going to talk about it. Prove that you're not going to get, if you do the same mistake more than once, you may not be here. I mean, we had an awful thing, but we've had, we were a values-based company, and we expected you to play the way we wanted you to play. And yeah, you can get burned, but I'll tell you something. I believe becoming vulnerable with people and telling them what you need from them is the surest way to get people on board, and get rid of the people who aren't going to play the way that you want to play.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't know if that helps, because I don't know what level she is at her company or whatever else, but
Yeah, Layla, feel free with follow on. And Phil asks us, he's taking notes, which I'm surprised I'm not an avid note taker, but he says he missed how you gave your employees a sense that serves the company was serving their higher power. Can you expand on it? Sorry to.
yeah. So I have found that when you interview people, it's not the academic superstars that are going to work best in the company. It's the smart people who also played soccer or were in a debate club or this or whatever. When my brother dies of a drug overdose and my sister never works a day in her life, my kids are vulnerable enough to be, they could really turn out like a mess, right? So I moved 4 miles from my office instead of living on the North Shore of Chicago, which is where I grew up in River Forest, if anybody knows that. It's near Oak Park. And I grew up in those schools, and then I went to New Trier for high school. My parents moved to the North Shore for high school. And of course, you'd expect me to go back to the North Shore. Well, Alberto, Culver was 4 miles from River Forest, so I chose to live 4 miles from the office so I would have more time to, to work and be with my children. And everybody knew those kids were very important to me, and everybody knew I had high risk pregnancies. They saw it, and I lost a baby when my first son was born at 7, and at 7 weeks early at 4 pounds. My second son was lost at 30 weeks gestation. I was working, everybody knew it, so they kind of got that my family was going to have to be okay. So I would absolutely go to a traveling softball game when my daughter was playing, but I'd be available for meetings at 6:30 in the morning if we wanted to call it. So I gave people the ability. We measured results, not actions. Okay, so it's not like I left it up to the manager if there was flex time. Some departments couldn't flex time. So
Yeah.
I don't know if this is answering the question, but I forfeited living on the North Shore. I was the room mom instead of everything else because I could bake those stupid brownies 100 times at night. I could make it to the round trip to the doctor's office. All 3 of my children managed to get hit in the jaw or teeth with baseballs. They were all baseball players or softball players. And, I made it clear. But we were taken advantage of sometimes. It's like if you've used every one of your personal and sick days and you've gone to Hawaii and you've done this, you had a wonderful time and everybody knows it. And then your mother gets sick. It's a little harder to flex for somebody when they've taken advantage of everything that you give them. So it was kind of a tough love situation. It was, I don't know,
Yeah.
it worked for us.
Well, you answered that beautifully, and now you sparked one more memory in your stories. You had larger competitors, obviously, but I remember you were able to lure one of the top executives because coaching. I won't tell the story. Will you just tell us that story before I move us on?
I, I, yes, I learn people all the time. So what story is the book that you're talking about?
I think it was you were able to lure, there was a top executive, and what won him over was that you
Oh,
allowed
it
him
was
to
the kind.
coach on a hockey team.
Oh, you're saying Andy. I'm saying it. Debbie's walking in and telling me Andy. It's Dick Hines. So we competed against Alberto was a nice sized company. We actually spun off the Sally Beauty Company in 2006 and $25 stock or $7 stock, $25. It was a $2 billion deal. And then we still had, the sale to Unilever of a $4 billion deal later. But we competed against, we were a small company. We competed against Procter 40 times our size, Unilever 50 times our size, L'Oreal. I mean, it was crazy. It's crazy. So how are we going to get, but we were Walmart and Kmart and Walgreens and, huge, they were huge to us. So how are we going to get executives to play in the same way? We had a mission that was treat the family well. So you'd get them in for the first interview, and then we'd be smart enough to know how many kids they had, what their wife liked to do, and we sent them huge baskets of stuff from Alberto saying we would love to show you the city of Chicago, Cubs or White Sox. We would bribe them. We would treat the family kindly. And this guy Dick Hines, who had been had been vice president of sales for ConAgra with the Walmart account and everything else. Turned out he's an Irish guy, but he was a Mormon, and the whole family connectedness that we did, brought people to us. And the culture change, which really happened, we were calling it Workplace 2000. It really happened between 93 and maybe 98 or 99, was national news. The fact that, this little company was in Harvard and then at Harvard's book and British Broadcasting and Tribune are coming to hear from us. We would get people interested. And then when they got in the door, they really liked the values and the culture. And it allowed us to compete. And as I said, Tresemme grew from probably $80 million brand to a $600 million brand, and was the fastest growing hair care brand in the United States for the 3 years previous to when Unilever came a calling. So that's a whole nother story. And, it wasn't just, it was Nexus and Mrs. Dash, and it was Oceans and Just For Me and TCB and St. Ives and Noxzema and Simple. It was, a lot of pretty cool brands.
Incredible. I just love your approach to it, the focus, the values, and how much the whole culture of the employees appreciated that. And I wish we didn't have to move on. Apologize. I wish we didn't have to move on, but we will go quickly over this next chapter. It's really, there was so much that went into moving your father into his role and you're taking over and then preparing for the exit. Well, when the exit finally came, what I understand is that actually setting up the family office was rather easy because so much thought and planning had gone into it. And so I'd love to hear just briefly, we don't have to spend too much time, but what can you tell us a little bit about creating the single family office, Polished Nickel Capital, and kind of how that played a part of the plan, and a little bit about that?
So it's funny, that name comes back to haunt me all the time. And I'm actually in the Kellogg book on names, is just a horrible name for me. Anyway, I never thought it would go public, but anyway, we were in a meeting and the lady who, I had a small family office. We bought space. We rented space from Alberto because when we did the Sally deal, it was the first sale of any stock we had done in our family's history. And we used to refer to it as the company hardware store. And if you don't have cash, if you're living on your income, it's a much better thing than when you have all this money that comes from selling a piece of your company. But we had to manage that money, and we had 3 people working in our family office. We did it inside of Alberto, and we made some mistakes first. Without question, we made some mistakes. But we went to a joint family group that didn't work for us. We ended up creating our own family office. We have a very large family office now because we have 20 people, which is crazy. We're not that wealthy to have 20 people, but we run 3 charities. So 8 of the people, 9 of the people work for the charities, and it's interesting. I'll talk about that. But we use Monticello and we use Merrill Lynch. I have a director in my family office who was a past Alberto employee, and the previous one was my CFO at Alberto. So I stuck with people that I knew because I wanted the same culture. I wanted the same philanthropy. I wanted the same vision. But we don't pay we don't have, my son is our CIO. Actually, Peter is I have 3 kids. They all work in a family related business. My middle son is a Vanderbilt Kellogg grad, and he's very, very sharp, national merit math guy and all the rest. He's our CIO. He wasn't for years, but he's been working with us now for a long time. He turned 42, 43, I should know that. So, we do a ton of grant planning for anybody who does a state, my game is to push as much money from my generation down to the next generation and on to the next generation, so we have you may have read it. I mean, I give these letters out, and anybody who wants one, send me an address and I'll send it to them. But we have a family letter that's 3 or 4 pages long that talks about who we are, what we believe in, why we do what we do. And I share it with people because I cannot have my family turn into people who don't work or have achievement, or it would drive me crazy. But anyway, our family office is split into 2 parts. We have a financial part and a creative part. And the creative part is because I'm writing my 3rd book. We sponsor a lot of charitable events. We decorate homes for my crazy family. But mostly it's about the charity stuff that we do. And we choose Peter as his own private equity fund that we invest in, and he's done, we've had some absolute failures, and we had 2 crazy successes that have overcome all of those. And I don't know, I have a belief that my kids are not young anymore, right? So my kids know everything that's in my will. I have the right to change it, and I will, and I have at times. And because of my brother, all of my grandchildren are in all of the trusts and grants and dynasty trusts that we have. But we have the right to eliminate any one of them. It's not like it automatically goes to them, because I'm not going to tolerate drug abuse and these kids getting millions of dollars. It's not going to happen. And I'm very open with my kids. My oldest son, we have a thoroughbred horse racing business. We feed about 160 horses. That's how you create a small fortune in horse racing.
Yeah.
You start with a big fortune. Right. But anyway, you can make money in that business through the stallions and the breeding. The racing is hard, but Greg does an amazing job, and he also runs our foundations. I told you about Peter. He runs his own private equity funds with our family's money. We own a rugby team. Don't ask me why, but it's very interesting. My daughter was a teacher forever, and she is kind of a sad story. One of our close friends had a child who drowned, and Lizzie quickly took her, I think they were 18 months and 2.5 years, and she found a survival floating program, and it changed her life. And long story short, Liz is a certified instructor in survival float. She created a foundation called the Cass Water Safety Foundation. We've given 1,000 scholarships so far, and we teach people to this method of survival float. And she's now, she just did a study with a top guy on child safety at Alabama, Birmingham, that shows that you can teach infants from 6 months to 5 years to survive a float and save their lives. I don't know if you know it, but drowning is the #1 cause of accidental death of children under 5, and the numbers are not going down. They just are not. So anyway, I work with all 3 of my kids. It's not always perfect, but it's really, really good. And our family office works with the same values that Alberto did, and our charities. Maybe I'll talk about that for 1 minute. Alberto gave many millions of dollars a year into the community. into any place where we had a plant. And my family probably put another $2.5 to $3 million into Chicago, where we lived. And when we sold Alberto, all these charities wanted us to, continue that funding. And we couldn't. We just absolutely couldn't, and it hurt. So a couple of years later, I figured out that our purchasing power as a corporation could be used to benefit charities. So we supply to 50 schools a year, 20,000 children, 100% of every school supply the school needs: clothing, deodorant, shoes, I told you, winter coats, athletic equipment, art supplies, incentive boxes. And we bring these two fantastic vans. It's called Enchanted Backpack. Rugs, everything. And it costs us about $11,000 per school. And the retail value of that stuff is $40,000. So
Wow.
we expanded into another charity called CC's Wish List, because we were becoming so prominent at these closeout shows, and people knew what we were buying a couple $1 million of this stuff a year. They came to us with men's shoes for $4 with vibrant bottoms and leather soles. And they came to us with towels, and we buy sheets, we buy extra long sheets for kids and Pell Grant kids in college for $6. So we created something called CC's Wish List, and we buy $2.5 million worth of stuff and put it into 100 charities' hands. And it's the equivalent of $8 or $9 million a year. So we've been able to, we turn quarters into dollars is what we do. And it's fantastic. And so, we have a video, which is very fun. I'd like you to please, this is my payment for today.
Yes.
Go look at cc'swishlist.org
Okay.
or enchantedbackpack.org and go on those videos. And if you don't cry, you'll be one of the few people who haven't. But it's that's how we've been able to maintain our presence in the community in a very different way. And it's fun, and it's fun to start something yourself. And the other thing, it's amazing how much loyalty you get from a workforce when you can connect them to doing good.
Oh, I can only imagine. I mean, it's just amplifying. You're creating a ripple effect. And I love that. You're not only a leader in business, but you're a leader in your family. And that's actually, you mentioned it, but I have a copy of your letter. It means so much. I've, shown this to my husband. I want to communicate the way you communicate with your family, the way you make the values known. And what's neat is that you update the letter.
Yeah, I
And
do.
yeah, can you tell us like how the letter came into existence? I believe there's family meetings that maybe happen. Can you tell us a little about
You
that?
know, um, I say I'm not a writer, but when you
You
put
are.
something in writing, you have to really think about it, and you have to review it, and you have to, and it takes more out of people to read it. And when you have a family meeting at least once every year and you make them read it, is there anything we want to change? Is there anything we want to do? It talked about when my dad bought his second house and when I bought my second house and how many years we were, and how my parents put their stock into a grat to be passed down to me, and I'm putting my stock into grats to be passed down to my children. And now I want my grandchildren and my kids to travel well, to live well, to have great educations. But I don't want them to have yachts and craziness. I want this money to take care of generations. And it talks about, we have a letter on philanthropy, and we have a letter about what we believe in. And my mother, being food insecure, taught us all, you love people for who they are, not what they have. The other thing that's kind of unusual about me is my mom was raised Episcopal, and my dad's mother was Jewish. His father didn't practice, but I married Howard, who was Jewish. We raised our kids, but never in a very religious household. But they were all bar and bat mitzvah, and they've all married Christians, two Catholics and a Protestant. And it makes, and my first cousins are Catholic. My aunt's brother is a priest. It's like, it makes an eclectic craziness of our family, but it also makes you appreciate people. It doesn't matter who they are or where they're from. It matters that they, are good people and they're kind and they do good things. So those are the things I want my kids to understand, and and it's what I want everybody to teach. And
Yeah,
it's just who we are.
incredible. There are several people in the audience who are asking about the letter and if it's something that you will
I'll tell
share.
you what, my email,
Yeah.
maybe Debbie's email. Debbie's email is D Grinnell, GR. Let me look it up. Is it two N's, Debbie, and two L's?
Grinnell. I'm just looking up.
Grinnell, D Grinnell at PN. She's got it up there.
Ah, there we go. Thank you,
Okay,
Debbie.
she put up the Lavin Family Foundation. She's also head of our foundation. If you write her and you want a copy of the letters, there's two letters. One is on philanthropy and one is the family letter. If you want one, we're happy to send it. If you live in Chicago and you want to come by my office, we'll give you the books. If you live outside of Chicago, the books each weigh 5 pounds. They cost a fortune. If you want to send me $20 for the charity, I'll send you the books. But you know, we have sent hundreds of these books out, and I go, oh my God, the price for shipping them is very, very heavy. But feel free to let us know. Don't buy the books on the internet because, as I told you, I give them away free. So when I go to a university, you might find 15 of the kids looking for the money, so they'll put the books on Amazon, but you're ending up with a used book and you don't have to. I printed that darn Gather As You Go 3 times now.
And this is a good question. So for those that want, can they buy the book directly on the foundation's website?
Debbie, answer that question. Is it still on there?
I am going to buy one for one lucky participant, but I'd love to gift it to people. It's beautiful.
Okay. So if you would like, so what I've said is I'll send anybody one book. If you want to buy 10 books, he'll write a check, $30 a book to Enchanted Backpack, and I will send you your books. And you can have as many as you want. And you know, open up Gather As You Go for a minute. Open up the book, Danielle, and just flip through the pages.
You see, I have like, it's just beautifully illustrated lessons, chapters of every story. I mean,
the book is, Debbie's talking to me. The book is basically about business. It's about leadership, branding, business, philanthropy, Bobby's journey, which is after the love of my life, after I got divorced, got brain cancer the last 4 years of living together, and it's his whole cancer journey. It's things I've learned, but it's also decorating and it's working moms and, you know, the guys. I work with a lot of outstanding men at the top of the field on these boards I'm on. And one guy said to me, Carol, I read everything but the decorating. I would decorate in my I decorate in my spare time, and I've done all of our own homes. But it's also how you raise good kids and how you teach them the word sure from the time they're 2 years old. So it's a crazy book, but it's been extremely popular. So it is not inexpensive to reprint. So I hopefully don't reprint it again.
Well, it's beautiful, and it makes me excited to hear that you're writing now a book about how to set up your philanthropies. And since you did touch on the chapter of the book, you do talk a lot about raising children. I'm a mother of 3 as well, you know, balancing work and life. And Kate asks from the audience, what are ways you're passing down these grounded values to your kids and grandkids, the idea of living well and giving back?
You know what? People laugh at this, but I don't think it's anything funny about it. Each of my kids in high school had to have a job. My daughter was a waitress. The problem is it costs me more in every restaurant I go to because she convinces me that everybody doesn't tip, so we give 35% tips and whatever. My son, I had 2 bank tellers. Craig worked for Sally, and he had to do nail. I made my kids go understand how little money you make at a job that most people have. So I think that's a way to start. You know, bar and bat mitzvah, they had to make a gift to 2 of them did the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation because their father was a diabetic, and Peter lost his best friend to kidney failure. So he gave money to the organ donor transplant fund and created a video for high school students. We've adopted families since the kids were little. You know, they have to put some of their own money in. I mean, it's hard, and parenting is hard. I can't imagine kids being raised without high quality parents because it's hard. It's hard to do even when you're high quality parents. But you know, I was a pretty tough mom. I was so afraid that I was gonna, you know, lose them to drugs or whatever else, that I was a pretty tough mom. But you know, in my household, I don't know if this answers the question. My kids are almost 4 years apart because I had high risk pregnancies and I had to go to bed for 4 to 7 months with my last two kids. And so in my house, if you didn't want to, don't come over unless you're going to play with all the kids. I'm sorry, they live here. It's just,
Yeah.
it's all in the book. It's it's I got lucky. They're very, very good people. They're not perfect. Peter had a DUI growing up. That's an interesting and not fun story. Everybody, there's nothing soft about these kids, but I now have 8 grandkids and 5 girls and 3 boys, and my children, who are 4 years apart, all got married in 9 months. It's like, that's in the book too. It's like, are you kidding me? I sold Alberto in 2011. You can imagine what that is, selling to a company like Unilever. That was May. July, my daughter got married. February, my oldest son got married, and April, my middle son got married. It was like, are you kidding me?
And you had a big role in planning those weddings, and they were beautiful.
Yeah.
They're just the touches, the attention to detail. I mean, you can read about it in the book, but they were phenomenal, and each one's so unique and so different.
Yeah, it was a challenge. But anyway, that caused me to have 8 grandchildren to the ages of 6 and 11. It's and it's getting a little tougher now as they're exposed to people who aren't so nice and everything else. But I don't know, parenting is a day by day by day. Is course correcting every damn day. My daughter calls and she goes, Scotty's having a total meltdown. I said, Liz, she's 10. Do you remember when you were 12? And I walked in your room and I said, why are you crying? And you go, I don't know. You're entering those preteen years. It's going to be hell. So just hold on. And, my Peter was my wildest kid. And I held on, with a chain of neck, threatening to send them to a monastery in Scotland. I must have said it 50 times if they ever used drugs. They drank. Proof of the DUI. I mean, they drank, but I don't think they ever did drugs. But I got to tell you, the other thing is, my brother was a mess. I mean, he's supposed to come for Christmas. His son has come from Australia where his ex-wife lived. We bring his son over. We're waiting for him waiting for him for Christmas. He doesn't show up for Christmas. You know what that does to little kids? Doesn't show up for Christmas. Doesn't show up for 2 days later. He's in a hotel shooting up. My brother was gorgeous and smart and completely addicted to drugs. And he went into 7 different facilities and we kept trying to help him and trying to help him. He got clean at the Betty Ford place once for about 3 months, but not reincarceration, but forget what the word is, but people, I think it's like 14% of people that go into these recovery centers ever really recover. But you don't want to hear all this. And if you do,
we do. I mean, thank you for sharing all of this. There's Annette has a question. I'm very curious to hear as well.
Okay.
Just how do you take care of yourself to be able to do all of this that you do with positivity and kindness?
It's so fun. I mean, first of all, I have amazing people around me. Okay. And I can't tolerate people who aren't kind to others. I mean, I've said goodbye. I mean, they've been very good people. I go, I can't live with that. So I have great people around me. I prayed for the Danny that I live 4 miles away. So when I really had an issue, I could go home. But I prayed for that nanny. I paid her more than she, in fact, what I did was I had 2. I had one work 3 days a week and another work 3 days a week because if one got sick, the other one could come and help. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. People laugh. My crazy guilty pleasures. I love slot machines. People laugh at that and go, what? So I go and I don't think of another thing in the world when I play those stupid slot machines. I know I've just completely altered your perception of me.
Oh, I love it.
I meet my 6 best girlfriends every year somewhere, and I pay for the trip. I'm, more successful than they're all fine, but I mean, I'm in the crazy successful money land. I take everybody away once a year, and we've been doing this even when at one point we were 6 of us and there were 18 children between us. We had a god awful driver, and we said, if you kill us, there's 18 children who are going to
Oh
die.
my gosh.
It was so funny because we would sit, at the Ocean Club in the Bahamas, and we'd sitting around the table at breakfast, and these men would come and go, who are you? What are you? They couldn't figure out what these women were
Yeah,
doing.
with
So
all these children.
keep your friends, whether you're a guy or a girl, keep your friends. Go do things with other people. Have the best help that you can possibly have. The years when I had to turn Alberto around, those were mind-bogglingly tough years, and I was raising young children at the time. But I would be in my coach house, which was attached to my house. It was above our garage. And I would have more 6 o'clock in the morning conversations with my teenagers who, this one didn't want to go to school because he didn't finish his paper. And this one, it's like, you got to be there. You got to be there. And I did not take the international jobs. I didn't. My parents wanted me to. They wanted me to. I wouldn't do it because those kids had to come first, especially when they're born at 4 pounds. They definitely have to come first. That 4-pounder is 6'2" right now. So he's
Wow. Wow, incredible. Well, Carol, do you have a hard stop? There are more questions, but I don't want to keep
I'm
you.
okay. I'm okay for 1:30. Not that you want to do that, but I'm
Well,
okay.
okay, these are good questions. So I'll answer Phil, or I'll ask Phil's, and then Jeremy will get to yours, and then I'll wrap up because I know I try to stay to our time. But Phil says, having been such a high achiever, how do you know it was time for a transformation from being in the trenches building a business to leading a family office and now being involved in nonprofit organizations? And how do you measure your growth and achievement now in your new role?
You know what? My dad used to say, you retire, you die. And I think he might have been right. My dad lived till he was 98. He was the entrepreneur in residence at San Diego State University. So he had a place in Rancho Santa Fe. And one of the chapters in my new book is, okay, you've been a CEO and you retired. Now what? I I still work. My life is my own though. I can come and go and schedule meetings around me. Um, I don't think I will ever not have a project or something that I'm doing. And look, I'm kind of spoiled rotten, right? I go to this show in Las Vegas where my slot machines are with
Mhm.
somebody else who's been worked with me for a million years and is a very close friend of mine. And we buy every single thing for our charities. We touch it. We make sure we like it. We make sure the 42 cents underwear aren't falling apart or the dollar t-shirts are good. We touch everything ourselves.
Yeah.
And we love it. We love it. So I say I'm spoiled because I buy truckloads of stuff and then I ship it back to the warehouse and all these lovely people take it apart, put it back together, pack it on pallets. So I get to go do the fun stuff. I get to create the idea. I get to create, Enchanted Backpack's really pretty cool because my first thought was we would do a free school supply store for teachers in Chicago. And it's a fantastic idea, right? But I'm a business person. So when I put the numbers together, I went, it was going to cost me $3 million to give away $2 million because I was going to have to run the warehouse. I was going to have to stock it. I was going to run out of stuff. What hours, this and everything else. So the magic of Enchanted Backpack is that whatever I find that is reasonable and good and high quality, I put it on the van. That you don't know what you're getting as a school. You're overwhelmed with craziness with whatever we send. So when I say I'm spoiled, I created charities that meet the mission I want. I get to do the fun part. I get to go interview the teachers. I have a fabulous team of people. And it's all about people. If you put good people around you and you can afford what you're trying to do, then I'm still having a lot of fun. So, um, people say I'm 73. I was the youngest person in every meeting I've ever been in. It's very hard to be 73 and be the oldest person in the room now. But anyway, it will happen to all of you. It will happen to all of you. My kids can't believe they're 40. But it's about creating a life that is purposeful. People say you live longer through philanthropy. It's a guaranteed fact. You live longer with friends and people around you. So work hard on that. Hopefully you can raise decent kids, and even the best people don't always raise decent kids. Some of it is just darn luck. And, you know, in my position, I get to do what I love, so it's okay.
Incredible. And that actually rolls into our last question beautifully. And I have a sneaking suspicion the book you're working on will also shed more insight. But Jeremy Rios asks, Carol, thank you for taking the time to share your story. What advice would you offer to someone looking to start a philanthropic organization without significant capital or established gravitas?
So it's so fun. In this, my kids asked me to write this book, and I couldn't figure out why I was writing it. And I said no. And then they expanded and said, Mom, you changed a company through philanthropy. You helped Northwestern and Tulane grow to be exceptional places through philanthropy. I mean, we haven't done it, but we aided in the mission and whatever else. So um, this book is, there's 12 stories in the book about people who have started small charities and they've grown into exponential charities. It's not hard to get your 501c3 approved. It's just really not. So that's the first thing. We service through CC's wish list 100 charities, probably 30 of them you've heard of, and the other 70 in Chicago you haven't, because we love to do jumpstart groups, if you will. Back with Alberto being the jumpstart company, you know, small, we like to give it to places that are starting out. So I teach people that you think you have volunteers, you better have 3 or 4 people who are going to stick with you to do it, because volunteers come and go. But find a mission, make it something that you love, try to get a supporter or two, decide what your budget is. You can't do it on no money, but you don't have to do it on huge money. It's harder for me to raise money because people say, you have so much money, why should we give you any money? Well, the biggest charities in Chicago are started by people like me, and they raise millions of dollars a year. And we probably cover 60% of our expenses, but people are catching on that they can send a pallet of stuff to their charity and their money can go 3 or 4 times further by working with us. So they're catching on. But it's really not hard. It's really not hard. And I don't want to say, I don't know how many people are on this thing, but I don't join any more boards. I'm still on 3 big ones, but I do say that I will give anybody an hour of my time if they really have a serious question about how you start a charity. Or I'll put my 2 or 3 of my people on the phone with you and teach you how to start a charity. I can't believe I said that, Debbie. You heard me say that.
Well, I think everything about today and the way you closed it really speaks to what an amazing leader, through kindness, through generosity, the mother, the CEO, and I just feel so honored. I'm sure everyone shares my sentiment of having this hour with you, Carol. Thank you so much
You're
for.
welcome. And thank you for listening. Like I said, if you took one small thing with you today, then it was worth my time. Okay, guys, take it easy. Be safe.
Thank you, everyone. I'll send the recording with the links that were shared. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.